Well, if at first you don't succeed, I guess if you are special counsel Jack Smith, you keep trying to come up with creative ways to make sure you do. Apparently, Smith is leaving the trial timeline up to the judge here. He's not pushing necessarily for a pre-election trial, but one more focused eventually on some of the more targeted things he had stressed. John Yoo is back with us, the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, UC Berkeley law professor. Guy's a genius. There's guys like this I used to, cheat on with the, you sit right behind them while you're working on your SATs, and then they discover you. But he's a lot younger than I am. Anyway, John, always good to have you. What do you make of this? I was thinking all bets are off, of course, if Donald Trump loses the election, and some of this maybe becomes a moot point, but I don't know about that. First, on this effort, he wants to save this thing, but it looks like it's floundering. What do you think?
First, if you're going to cheat on me, I was going to take one of those big barbecue chickens you've got there and put it right between us so you couldn't see over my shoulder.
Smart move.
Those things look great. This is what's going to happen. There's no way this trial can take place before the election, which shows what a disaster the whole thing ended up being. Remember, Jack Smith tried to get this trial up and running and done before the November election. But because they broke our constitutional norms to never try former presidents and not to try major candidates of the opposition party, Jack Smith, because of his aggressiveness and because of the lack of political control by President Biden and Harris and the Attorney General, he went off and triggered all of these basically constitutional explosions. For example, is the president immune from prosecution? That had never been raised before. Now, because the Supreme Court had intervened and decided, it threw off the trial by over a year. And we still don't know, after the Supreme Court decision, whether Jack Smith can go ahead with some of these charges and use the evidence he wants to use. Then you have another issue. Is Jack Smith even constitutional? A judge in Florida, reading Justice Thomas's opinion in the immunity case, just held Jack Smith as unconstitutional. That hasn't even been raised and resolved in the Washington case about January 6th either. You have to the judge here has to resolve all those issues first before any trial can go forward. And guess what? Trump gets the right to go to the Supreme Court again on both those two issues before a single juror sits down.
So what about the Alvin Bragg situation in New York and the sentencing on that in September? What happens to that?
That's the smart question, Neil. You were looking over my shoulder.
Yes, I was.
Because that really is the vulnerability to Trump. It's not going to come from this January 6th case with the special counsel. If anything, that case has been a benefit to Trump. This Alvin Bragg case, remember, this is the one about the hush money payments to former porn star that took place allegedly before the election. That scheduling date is still set for September 18th in 2 weeks, just at the same time when absentee ballots are going out in some states like my home state of Pennsylvania. Judge Merchan there shows every intention of going forward and sentencing Donald Trump, even though this is the weakest of the cases. This is the only case that got to verdict and resulted in a conviction. Now, the question there is, is Merchan is he going to actually sentence Trump, a nonviolent first-time offender in a nonviolent case, to jail time? I think he probably will, given everything he's done in this case before. And then I don't think this is likely, but he as a judge has the discretion to make Trump go to jail immediately while his case is pending appeal. Most of the time you let the defendant out while he's pressing his legal rights on appeal, but a judge has the right to have the defendant sit in jail while his case is pending. I think that would be a disaster for the country and for our election. I don't think this judge will do it, but he has the power to do it.
There are two ways that could play out. If he really is, as the Trump people have alleged, so biased against him and just has it out for him. But he must recognize that sending Donald Trump to jail in the middle of a presidential election might only galvanize support for him, as we've discovered with just the legal cases themselves. What do you think?
I agree. Every time that the other side from Donald Trump has tried to use lawfare, it's boomeranged and backfired on him and helped Trump. I think if Merchan were to actually sentence Trump to jail and then make him serve a sentence right away, that would help Trump. But on the other hand, Judge Merchan here has never shown any flexibility, never shown any consciousness of the magnitude of this case on our politics. Instead, rather than taking his time, rather than thinking things through, considering the effect, the consequences of his trial on our politics, he's actually rushed forward every time he could. He's accelerated the case. He's embraced all the politics. Here's one important example, the immunity decision from the Supreme Court. The case itself says you can't use evidence from the Oval Office to convict a president, even if you're trying him for things that occurred before he was president. That evidence was used in the Merchan trial. Any normal judge would order a retrial, I think, because of the Supreme Court decision. This judge hasn't done that. Instead, he wants to go ahead and sentence Donald Trump. I think he knows he's going to get reversed on appeal, but he still wants to label Donald Trump a felon.
So super quickly, Donald Trump loses the election. Is all of this stuff potentially back on?
If he loses the election, he's in big trouble. In fact, if you think about the Democrats have given him a super personal incentive, if he didn't already have one, to win the election. Because if Trump wins, he can fire Jack Smith. If he doesn't win and Kamala Harris wins, those prosecutions can still go forward. They'll go on for years and years before Trump gets any legal peace.
Amazing. John Yoo, thank you very much. No one better I would like to cheat off of. John Yoo, always good seeing you. The former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. I might share some of the barbecue with him, right? We might? No. What am I thinking? No, I wouldn't do that.